What's up everybody, it's Drew Wilkins with Swine and Bovine Barbecue, and in this video I'm going to show you how to prepare a barbecue feast for an event that's in the future. We're going to be making brisket, ribs, and sausage, traveling with it over 300 miles up to Fayetteville, Arkansas, and then reheating it for the Arkansas-Texas football game. Let's get going. So this is day one of prep to make a bunch of barbecue to take up to the Arkansas-Texas football game. I've got 3 briskets here. We're going to trim these up, season them. They'll sit in the fridge overnight seasoned. But one thing we want to do though is take that trim and make sausage. So we're going to be making brisket, ribs, and sausage. The trim from these briskets is going to go into the sausage as well as some pork belly that I bought. But first things first, we got to get these bad boys trimmed. Just going on with a 50-50 salt and pepper and then a homemade seasoned salt for the seasoning. This video is going to be a little different. I'm not going to be explaining how I trim or how I cook. I've done all these videos before. If you want in-depth views into how I do that, I'll link those in the description of this video. But it's going to be a lot of time lapses, kind of explaining how I plan on a cook like this. This is probably my 4th year, I think, taking barbecue up for an Arkansas football game. So I'll just go through the process, how I do things, how I plan it out in order to have it ready for the game. But with that being said, let's trim these briskets. Future Drew here. The brisket trim video had an issue. I tried transferring it multiple different ways to my computer, so you're not going to be able to see me trim 3 briskets, but if you've seen me trim 1, you've seen me trim 100. That process has not changed whatsoever. Day 1 prep is done. Got our briskets trimmed, seasoned up. We also got our pork belly and brisket trim salted and cured. So these briskets are gonna go in the fridge overnight. We're gonna smoke them tomorrow. We're also going to grind up this meat, then add the rest of our spices, our cheese, and jalapenos to it because we're making jalapeno cheddar sausage. And then we'll let that cure in the fridge overnight. But everything said and done, these are gonna go in the fridge, dry brine overnight. This is gonna go in the fridge, cure overnight. See you tomorrow.
Day 2 of prep has started. We've got the briskets on the pit. Maxes the pit out at 3 briskets. Also have to stagger them here a little bit because my temperature probe sticks out of the door. So lose a little flexibility with where you put it there. But we're just gonna smoke these briskets away, foil boat them, pull them when they're done. But also on day 2 prep, we've got our sausage. So let's go take care of that.
Back inside, it's time to make our jalapeno cheddar sausage. And again, this is the sausage that I've made on this channel before. The link for this whole recipe is in the description. We've had our parts in the freezer. We've had our meat in the freezer as well to get nice and cold, but not frozen. So let's get grinding. The sausage is all cased up. Our briskets are off of the pit. I actually finished them in the oven after I foil boated them. They were taking a while and my smoker was packed. Kind of attribute it to being similar to a full oven, just took a little longer to cook. So saved the wood, finished them in the oven. I've done that before and it turns out just fine. So gonna let these rest. The briskets, I'm gonna treat them just like I would any other cook. They're gonna hot hold in the oven overnight once they come down to around 140 degrees. The sausage is going to go into the fridge overnight. I don't have any extra wire racks to put them on, or I would, but then tomorrow we'll cut them into individual links, smoke them off.
Day 3 of prep, we went ahead and vac sealed our briskets. So we have them all vac sealed up. And we're gonna get them in the freezer. We're gonna freeze those. Then when we make the trip, we'll put them in a cooler without ice. They'll thaw out nicely and be ready to heat or reheat the day of the football game. So now it's time to cold smoke our sausage.
We're on to day 4 prep. So I vac sealed those sausages yesterday, put them in the freezer. They're hanging out with the briskets. Again, just like the briskets, when we're ready to drive up to Fayetteville on Thursday, I'll put those in the cooler, let them thaw out while we're there. They'll still be plenty cold, if not even still a little bit frozen. When I get to Fayetteville, then they'll hang out in the fridge and thaw out. That way they're ready to reheat on Saturday. But today, for day 4, we're gonna trim some ribs. We're going with 8 racks. And I bought St. Louis spares. St. Louis spares, they fit a plate better when you're serving a lot of people. And also when I'm trimming 8 racks, I wanna go with something a little easier than cutting off the breastbone on a full spare to cut them down to spare ribs. So I went ahead and made the decision to just get the St. Louis spares from the start. Not a lot of trimming involved, make it a little easier from a prep standpoint on myself. So let's get these ribs trimmed. Our 8 racks of ribs are trimmed, seasoned up, just went Diamond Crystal Kosher salt and 12 mesh black pepper. I like to go a little coarser than 16 mesh on direct heat ribs. So these are gonna go in the fridge overnight. We'll cook them tomorrow. It is day 5 of prep and it's our last day of cooking. We've made it. We have our ribs on the chud box. I have 4 on the original chud box, and then I have 4 up on the newer version of the chud box on the deck cooking. We're gonna roll these direct heat ribs just like we normally would. So get ready for some time lapse. The ribs are done. And yes, that's a Santa. I push for after Thanksgiving, Christmas, but the wife disagrees. But they're looking really, really good. When I'm vac sealing ribs like this, I always try and get them pretty dark because when I reheat them in foil, we'll lose a little bit of that color. But man, these are looking perfect as is. Really, really happy with how these turned out. And that's it for prep. We've cooked everything that needs to be cooked. At this point, all that's left to do is reheat it on game day. So we'll see you in Fayetteville when it's time to reheat. As for packing up the brisket, sausage, and ribs to take to Arkansas, I put the brisket and all the sausage and maybe a rack or 2 of ribs in a Yeti 45 cooler. Put a little bit of ice in there, not much. It doesn't need it because the briskets are frozen, the sausage is frozen, the ribs I did not freeze, just refrigerated those, and then put the rest of the ribs in a Yeti Hopper 20 cooler. And loaded that down with ice just due to the fact that they were not frozen and we weren't gonna have that residual coolness to keep them cold throughout the trip. We made it to game day and the reheating process has begun. So reheating everything at 275 degrees. The briskets are gonna take the longest, the ribs the second longest, and then the sausage, of course, the shortest. The sausage should only take about 30-35 minutes to get up to temperature. The ribs, I'm guessing, are gonna be about an hour and a half, and then the briskets, probably looking at 2.5 hours to get them up to temp. So
Woke up early, got it started. They're all in the oven. You'll see a little bit of the wrapping process here in a second. On how I did things, I wrapped in butcher paper with a little bit of tallow. It was either that or just fully coating in aluminum foil, so I go with butcher paper on the rewrap. The ribs, I add a little bit of the mop sauce. I saved that mop sauce, pulled all the onions, garlic, lemons out of it, and just reheated it this morning. Put a little bit of that in with the wrap. And then the sausage, we're just gonna put them on the good old gas grill. Super easy. We're out of oven space as well. I've got 2 ovens here, thankfully. That makes it a lot easier to reheat things, but sausage is just gonna go on the gas grill. Try and keep it at 275, let them reheat that way. But once that's done, we'll be ready to go to the game.
In a rush to get to the game, I didn't film actually loading the coolers up with the finished product or the reheated product of the brisket ribs and sausage, but I brought them up to about 150 degrees across the board in temperature, put them in the Yeti, was able to get all the sausage, all 3 briskets, and a rack or 2 of ribs in there, and then I put the remaining 6-7 racks of ribs in a Yeti Hopper 20. But one mistake I've made in the past when doing this was heating it well beyond the temp that I wanted to serve it at, like 165, 170, even 175, thinking that I would get temperature drop within the cooler. If you've got a cooler like a Yeti, you're not gonna get really hardly any temperature drop. When I pulled those out that I heated way beyond the actual temperature that they needed to go to, and then put them in the cooler right away versus letting them cool down a bit, they didn't lose any temperature. Got shredding of the briskets, the ribs were too hot, the sausage was too hot when it was time to cut into it. So take that into account. If you want to warm it up to a 165 or something like that, just let it start cooling off before you put it in your cooler. Because a cooler like a Yeti with the insulating properties that it has, you're not going to really get any temperature drop whatsoever. But we loaded up our coolers, took them to a suite. My cousin has a suite for Razorback football games, and once a year I bring up barbecue for it. So we left at about 8:30 in the morning. Unfortunately, it was 11 o'clock game, so didn't get any pre-game tailgating in. But we got everything set up, and I don't have a ton of footage of actually serving the barbecue, unfortunately. You'll see a few clips here, but it was busy. We had a football game to watch, so you're not gonna see a ton as it relates to that, but here's a few clips of the process. All right, and that wraps it up. That's how I cook brisket, ribs, sausage in advance of an event, travel with it, reheat it, and then serve it. Overall, it was a success. Everybody enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun cooking for a group that size and feeding a lot of people. That's a lot of the fun I get out of making barbecue. I love eating it, but if I just liked eating it, I'd probably go to a barbecue restaurant, because there's a ton in Texas, and eat it that way. But giving it to other people and enjoying that experience with them is like 3/4 of the fun of barbecue for me. It's getting to see other people try your food, get feedback on it. It's really hard to beat that process. And serving 40 to 50 people at a Razorback football game certainly accommodates for that. It was a great time, and unfortunately the score did not turn out in our favor, but hopefully this video was helpful for you. And if you want to see more like this, make sure and subscribe to see future videos. And if you have any comments or suggestions on how you prep barbecue for an event that's in the future, or how you travel with it, please leave them in the comments down below. Would love to learn more about how you do it. Maybe incorporate some of those ideas into how I do it for next year's football game. But thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Bye.